All right, guys, welcome back to Crossman Productions. It's Wednesday. We made it halfway through the week. Man, it's been such a crazy week. Yesterday, we had some awesome guests with Matthew Fisher and Alexander Hawk of the Boombastic Media podcast on, and they were great guys, man. We had a lot to talk about. April 10th, I'll be on their show, so that's pretty exciting. April 12th, you guys know Power Slap 7 is going to be on Rumble. And then the following week, Wolverine and Damien LaBelle will be on our show, as well as bare knuckle fighter J.R. Ridge. He's also fighting on the 12th. He's trying to, reach for his title shot, and he will be with us the following Wednesday after that fight. So, anyways, we got a lot of good stuff coming up. Got Venus Monique coming up. We got Venetia Ivy, Larry Hankin. We got just a crazy lineup of shows coming up. So tonight I have another podcaster, another guy that Steve Joyner introduced me to. His name is Fabian Ojeda. I'll make sure I got it right. But yeah, he's going to come on. We're going to get to know Fabian a little bit and talk to him about his podcast and learn a little bit more about him and what he's doing. So I am going to. What's up, brother?
How you doing, man? Hey, you almost got it right.
Did I still butcher it?
Well, the middle syllable would be more like "hey," but it's all right. I'll go by Ojeda tonight.
Ojeda. All
right. Oh, hey, duh.
Yeah. Right. I knew I was going to butcher. That's why I asked you before the show, man. So yeah, I'm glad you're on the show, brother.
Yeah, likewise, man. I was we put it off for a little bit. Got sick for a bit. It's been working a lot, so finally making it happen. So glad to be here.
Well, cool, man. Yeah, I'm excited about having you on too. Yeah, we've been trying to hook up for a while. I ended up in the hospital. They had a heart attack. So yeah, so trying to get everything back on track from that. But yeah, and then you've been doing a lot of traveling.
So, a lot of working.
Right. So let's dive in. Kind of introduce yourself and tell my audience kind of about where you were born and raised and what was life like for Fabian growing up.
Oh, it's an interesting one, man. Here goes my little bio, right? So name of the podcast is Ignorance is Strength Podcast. And so, I've been doing it since a lot of people, I think, popped up with podcasts during the pandemic and stuff like that, right? As kind of a way to, not go crazy. Right. To maybe have some interaction with people and whatnot. And so it was the same thing with me. I always got a lot of people telling me like on Facebook and stuff like that, like, hey, you're funny. You should, do some kind of, entertainment. And I think I like to be, entertaining. I used to play music and whatnot. I've always been big, like at school or do speeches and things like that. And even at work, I'm a trainer, but I kind of see it almost as like a stand-up comedy routine when I'm training people,
Right.
So it's an outlet, it's definitely an outlet. But as far as where I was born and raised, I live in California all my life. El Monte, California is where I was, where I grew up. I'm kind of like the old Cheech Marine movie, Born in the East LA.
Right.
I was born in the East LA. But yeah, I grew up in El Monte, California, all the way through elementary school, high school, and whatnot. Living currently in Pomona, California. It's not too far away. Still LA County. Growing up, what it is it's a poor kid trying to make sure he doesn't get into, trouble and gangbanging and on things like that, So I've always kind of, I've been kind of outside the box a lot of the time, like I was always a kid that's like, hey, if something's not working for me, I don't mind losing friends. You know what I'm saying? Like when growing up in a city like El Monte, right, for example, or if you want me to say it the way the locals say, El Monte, right? Whatever. Growing up in El Monte, the way is a lot of kids, like I remember having friends that were in elementary school, like honor kids, right?
Right.
All of a sudden, sixth, seventh grade comes around, is like, oh, little Henry just got caught, stealing stereos out of cars. Huh.
Oh, wow.
Right. Oh, wow. They doing some drugs now. All right. Well, I don't want to do drugs,
Right.
and it's like, I've always kind of been the type of, all right, if it's not working for me, I'm just, let me be a loner for a bit, reassess, do my thing,
Right.
and so I think everybody kind of struggles, like in, middle school, elementary school, everybody's having fun, right?
Right. Right.
Middle school, everybody kind of struggles. Oh, who am I? Who am I? Right? The existential crisis of your young life. And then I think people start to find themselves around high school. And so for me, what was my thing and everybody knew me for was, the musician and the wrestler, right? Yeah, the musician and the wrestler. And so, I was that kid that played like 6 times at the talent show, used to carry around an acoustic guitar like a jerk, right?
Right.
But at the same time, was captain of my wrestling team. And, that would really kind of, I think, kept me, on the straight and narrow and everything. And
Right.
taught me a lot of life lessons there. So a lot of what I learned young was through those two things, music and wrestling. And then from there, I know before we started, you mentioned did security. I did a lot of security work.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
remember being a bouncer, like when I shouldn't have even been in the clubs.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, 18, 19 years old, supervising 40-year-old men, trying to tell them
Right.
what to do. But from there, at the same time, I was working in education. And so that's where I'm at now. Other than doing the podcast, I work for a nonprofit as a trainer for after school programs and whatnot. And so that's what takes up the majority of my time. That's what pays the bills. That's what pays the mortgage.
Right. That's tough
Yeah.
too, man. Trying to do a podcast full time and doing a full time job. How do you balance the gym?
You see, here's the thing, and I tell podcasters all the time because, like, to me, it's honestly, for me personally, just a hobby for me. I know a lot of people, they do it full time, they monetize it, they take it very seriously, they want to be the next Joe Rogan or something, or they really they got something going, know. And I'm not knocking any of that. That to me is like, hey, if you got a passion for it, you're good at it, you do your thing. But for me, it's really, again, it's an outlet. I used to be really creative with music, writing and things like that. Right now, I'm currently most creative with cooking. So you want, some recipes, but it's just another outlet for me, and I think just recent, I think my most recent episode was like 161, something like that. I don't have seasons. I just keep going. So
Wow.
people ask what season are we on. I'm like, well, season 116, number 161. But I recently took a break, and so I didn't announce it or nothing. I just didn't put out episodes for a while, because hey, it got busy, I got sick, life got in the way. And so to me, it's like, if it's not fun, I'm not gonna do it. And that's my philosophy on the whole thing, is that if it ever stops being fun, I just won't do it. But it is fun. I get to talk to a lot of interesting people, and some like kind of like your podcast. I saw a little opening, pretty cool. I'm in there with the firemen and with the DJs and with the judges, but some people are ordinary everyday people, and just like you've interviewed a lot of the same people in the same circles, like you mentioned Larry Hankins coming back and all that, local like pro wrestlers and things like that, musicians and whatnot. So it's really cool to talk to all these people, hear their stories and whatnot, and just kind of get in there and practice that gift of gab, But yeah, to me, it's not anything I ever plan on monetizing. I'm doing it for fun, and people listen, But if it ever stops being fun, or gets too in the way, I probably won't do it anymore.
I'm right there with you, man. I enjoy doing it. So I started doing the show right after the pandemic too. And I say this all the time, that the reason I did it is because during the pandemic, everybody was so isolated, and and then they were so divided. Everybody's divided by race, by politics, by religion, and everybody's just fighting online because it's the only place they could go, because all the shutdowns, and so everybody would just get on and vent online. And so I wanted to create a show that showed the people that we have more in common than we do that separates us. True. And so I wanted to bring people in and share their journey. And then, just listen to them. One of the guys that, I talk about all the time, his name's Omar Ramos. He and I used to go back and forth on Facebook and just argue with each other. And, and then I was like, you know what? I want to get to know Omar, not just for somebody I go back and forth on Facebook. So I brought him in the studio and got to know him. And when I heard his story, dude, it blew me away. I didn't even know what to say. And then, like, he and I have been friends ever since. He's probably one of my biggest supporters. I'm one of his biggest supporters. So that's kind of what I did. What kind of drew you into doing podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already had the equipment from making music.
Right.
I'm like, well, what else can I do with this? Right? I don't have a band right now. Right? I don't. Right. I'm not putting music together. I'm like, well, I got the microphones. I got a mixer. I'm like, everybody's trying this whole podcasting. And at the time, I was listening to a lot of like pro wrestling podcasts because they tell great stories. And I was never into like Joe Rogan podcasts or any like true crime or anything like that. It's not interesting to me, But like listening to those stories, I'm like, well, I can tell stories, right? I'm like, people get their dumb friends on. I'm like, I got dumb friends, right? I'm like, I could do that, I'm like, what? So try it, and let's say it fails. So what, right? Like we tried it and it didn't go anywhere, but at least I have a little something out there that I can listen to and say, that was a funny day. My first few podcasts were just people that I know personally. You know, the first one I'm like, all right, let's make it interesting, and I'm like, who do I know that's kind of interesting? I'm like, well, I got a cousin that's doing steroids right now. I don't know anything about that. How about we talk about that? And so that was the first episode, and everybody found out, how easy it is, and what kind of a mess it is. Kind of just you're going to be on it your whole life, kind of thing. And that first episode was like, all right, we got something here, know. And then the next couple episodes, just a couple of those dumb friends I mentioned, telling old high school stories or stories when we were in a band together and things like that. Just people that I know. And then little by little, people started reaching out to me like, hey, I was interested in maybe being on your podcast. And it's just like, okay. I'm like, I interview anyone, let's talk to anyone, and some of those were really cool. Like one of my favorite episodes is just talking to some guy that like he had a speech impediment and he was from Wales, right? Oh, wow. I don't even remember why I talked to him. I think he just reached out. One of us reached out to the other and said, I think he's like a comedian or something, but we hardly even talked about that. The funny thing is that we were just kind of like really talking about the differences, the subtle differences between like fast food and stuff like that from America and Wales. I'm like, that is fascinating. And so many people listen to it like, hey, that was kind of good. It was weird, but it was kind of good. I'm like, yeah. And just those little things. I think people like being a fly on the wall, listening to conversations, I'll be honest with you. I'm not like, hey, the naturally friendly, let me go talk to everybody type of person. I'll sit and be a people watcher. That's my nature. But I think I developed a little bit of a gift of gab when I was a bouncer, and I had to kind of by necessity learn how to just listen to idiots and converse with them, So yeah, I mean, that kind of got me into it. Yeah, I mean, it just stayed fun, so I just kept doing it.
Cool. Yeah, that's kind of how things work too. Is that once we started doing this, I've started making it intentional to listen to people and listen to their story, and then inviting people in because one of the things I learned coming out of the pandemic is everybody's got a story. Got a story. And just sitting down and listening to it. And, you're talking about seasons, we're on season 3, but it's still, so we've been going for 3 years. I just interviewed Matthew Fisher and Alexander Hux, from the Boombastic, and they've been doing it for 6 years, and they were doing it before the pandemic. But it's kind of the same when you get to sit down and listen to other people's stories, which is, just so many incredible stories out there. Of all the guests that came in, who was one of your favorites? It's always an unfair question to ask people because when you do that many, interviews, you have, all of them's your favorite. Everybody says, but what's the one that comes to mind?
Man, that's so tough. I got so many that are really good. Like obviously, you know, some of the celebrity ones are really good. You know, I had like Tommy Chong.
Right.
I had you know, Santino Morella, the wrestler.
Yeah.
And then Donkey Lips, who was on Salute Your Shorts on Nickelodeon in the
Right.
90s. But some of my favorite episodes. Wait, this is a clean podcast, right? We don't say no.
You're fine. Go ahead. What?
No, I don't know how else to describe it. That's why some of my favorite episodes. Every 10 episodes, I do what's called the shit show,
Okay.
right? And that's an episode with you know, 3 of my friends, and we just run the gamut with all the stupid topics. And those are
Right.
the most fun because they're a little longer. You know, it's just a bunch of guys, you know, just really talking nonsense, and people
Right.
seem to get into those. And so those are every 10 episodes, and those are probably some of my favorites for sure. I've had some bad ones too, but you know, we won't really talk too much about those. I think we have a common guest where we had a pretty bad one. We won't mention.
You know, I don't know. I've never really had like a really bad guest. I've had, and I think I know who you're talking about.
Oh yes, you did.
I've had a guest that came in. And I guess the toughest guests are the ones that don't really talk. You know what I mean? Yeah, you ask them a question and they're like, yeah, and they answer with one word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How was your day? Good. Okay, that's not a conversation. You know, and then you try to drag conversation out of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm talking about the common guest, and I'll say it's a female.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go any further. I'm not gonna get us in trouble.
Right.
But I'm like, I had that same guest, and I'm like, dude, I've gone through 50 questions in like 20 minutes. You know, what do you want me to do here?
Right.
Like, you're it's like you're the one who wanted to come on here.
Right.
I didn't ask for this, you know. So it's like, say something, you know, promote something,
Right.
give me something, tell a lie. I don't care, you know.
Right. So you know, the funny thing about that is after the interview, that person, like, you know, we went back and forth and talked for, I don't know, probably about 2 weeks.
Nice person. You know?
Yeah. Super cool person.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they're used to being in the spotlight. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So, but yeah, super cool person. I would have them back on if I could get them to, you know, to converse.
It's okay. I don't think the self-awareness is there where they're gonna be like, that's me they're talking about. I don't think it's there. You know, nice as a person may be, I don't think that she would get it.
Who's the toughest interview that you've had? Like maybe emotionally or?
Oh, well, mostly not really many. I mean, there have been some that have been pretty good where people talk about like, you know, abuse or overcoming like you know, domestic stuff and things like that, which always kind of, you know, hits close to home and whatnot. I just like doing those episodes because I like giving people a platform to kind of tell their story. You know, I had one, I think it was like my 15th episode or something like that, with a girl named Mary, who actually went to school with, and you know, she came on and wanted to talk about overcoming, you know, domestic abuse and things like that, and becoming a better parent and whatnot. And that one actually kind of was more serious because I'm more about like, hey, let's just, you know, tell a bunch of dumb stories and joke around and things like that. But that one was helpful because it actually helped repair, you know, a lot of you know, kind of strained relationships in that family, which is, I'm like, damn, I'm like,
wow,
with a podcast. I'm like, okay, cool, if we can do that. I mean, yeah, I guess I belong there in your intro with the judges and DJs and firemen. You know, but yeah, that one. But other than that, like and then the one that we mentioned earlier, there was one that was kind of hard to get through because the dude was just high, like he was just super high, and he had nothing to say either. It was a short. I usually go like an hour. You know, that's typically what I go. Maybe 45 minutes if it's short. But this interview went under 30 minutes, and the guy was just completely high, and you know, he just didn't give me anything. I'm just like, and I was like, I think people are gonna be creeped out listening to him, you know, and so actually it was kind of one of these people that was in the same circle of, you know, people that get interviewed on all the same podcasts with Joyner and everything, and and you know, I remember someone in this circle reaching out and saying, "Did you interview this guy?" I said, "Yeah." Like, what are you gonna put that episode on? I'm like, I'm debating it, but I'm like, you know what? Let's just put it out, right? And check it out. This guy, thinks it's the greatest thing ever. All right. And ironically, on YouTube, where I don't really post because I only put it on there as a sound file. Like I don't even unless I make a video specifically for YouTube, it's just sound, right? And ironically, where I get no views and no plays on YouTube, this guy immediately shot up to like 4,000 views, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest thing ever." He goes, "You need to have me back on. Like we need to get back on there. I just finished filming a movie." I'm like, "You finished filming a movie like in a day or two?" Like,
wow.
You know what I'm saying? And so after that, I just kind of like, was doing other things, and I think I even switched phones, and so I found these lost voicemails of his where he calls me one day. He's like, "Hey, I just want to thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I think we should be back on again. You're the best interview I ever had, blah, blah, blah. Look at the YouTube numbers." I'm like, I don't like that. And then again, these are the lost voicemails because I had gotten a new phone. And I guess I hadn't set it up right. Another voicemail from like 2 days later, right? You haven't called me back yet, and I thought we would have another opportunity to blah blah blah. And then he starts blaming Steve Joyner, right? I told this on my podcast, and I talked to Steve about it.
Wow.
And he goes like, don't believe anything Steve Joyner says. He's a he's a liar and blah 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the next voicemail is just like, "Yeah, you must really be kissing Steve's ass, huh? Because you haven't called me back yet." And it goes like, "Please call me back. You're a great guy. I love you. Goodbye." I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
Like, what was that all about?
Right.
Like, I just, first of all, I wasn't interested, but I didn't even get those voicemails, and they were all like, one after another, after another, after another. Yeah. This guy was like such a weirdo. And then I remember deleting the number, blocking it, and then just recently, I got a random call from a number I didn't know, and I'm like, maybe I should answer it. I think I forget why I was answering all numbers at the time because like some kind of I was bought something, I don't know. But then I go hello, and then this guy starts talking to me like very familiar, like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, good. This is, and then he says his name. I'm like, Jesus Christ, are you kidding me? So yeah, talk about rough, right?
Right, man. That sounds like a bad breakup, dude.
Kind of, right? I'm like, I didn't even know that I was in that situation,
Wow. We'll have to talk off camera because I'm kind of curious who that is now. Is it anybody?
I don't know. I haven't looked to see if he's on there. Okay. But he was a actor, director, Hungarian guy, skinny. We'll mention his name.
Tell me after the show so we can. I'm kind of curious now who that was.
You might have interviewed him, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody I've had on the show so far has been, just really awesome people. So, luckily, I haven't ran into that yet. So,
hopefully, you won't.
Yeah. So the show Ignorance is Strength. What's kind of the main focus of that show?
There is none. There is none, right? It's kind of like just basically again, just like being a fly on the wall at the bar. It's getting people in there and just telling their story. I don't care who you are. I'll interview you. I'll talk to you. We'll figure something out. We'll pull something out. That'll be interesting. So I never really wanted to have like a focus. Like some people are like, okay, well, this is going to be a business podcast. And all we're going to do is talk about cryptos. And I'm like, nah, to me, I'm like, I've got so many different interests that to narrow it down to one thing doesn't work for me. And again, because I want to be entertained by it too. Like if I were to focus it too much, I might get more views and plays and, opportunities to monetize, but I'm not interested in that. So, I mean, it's kind of weird. I'm like, this is the worst advertisement for a podcast ever, but I don't really care. I'm just like, if people listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't, but that's kind of it. It's more, a lot of times more for me, really.
To give you something to do. They have something to listen to later. Yeah. But that's cool though. Cause, to me, that's one of the reasons I like having a variety of different people come in and not make it just one thing. We've had a lot of the power slap guys come in, and people are like, "Oh, you should turn this into like a power slap," And I'm like, I love the guys from Power Slap coming on the show. They're great guys, but I don't want to narrow the show down to just that. I mean, we have so many, just awesome people come through here and with awesome stories. And I'm the same way. I don't want to narrow it down. I want to be able, anybody to be able to come in and just, shoot the breeze and share their story and inspire people.
I know. I was listening to you talk about Power Slap on your intro right there. That's interesting, man, because it's like a new thing. Now, listen, right. I am not a big fan of it for various reasons, right? But every now and then you'll see a viral clip and you're like, damn, As a matter of fact, I don't really know any of their names or never really watch or anything like that. Right. But I saw a clip one day. I'm like, I know that girl. Right. And it's gone viral, I think, at this point where her name's Jackie Cataline. She slapped the hell out of this other girl and knocked her out, but she lost. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And she knocked her out, but somehow she didn't win.
Yeah.
Those rules are so convoluted. It's like, come on, clearly the better, stronger athlete won. Right. And like by some, weird rule where it's like you turned your toe the wrong way or something like that. Like, because they're like, oh, she stepped, she clubbed. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but like that was all slap. And if there was a step, it was like a toe. Right. So it's like they need to really like, I don't know, man. I don't even like the whole thing because it's like giving somebody like concussion after concussion to me is like how much longevity is there in that quote unquote sport, right? But yeah, the reason I know who she was is because she used to wrestle the same time that I did. She used to beat up all the guys at the tournaments.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, that girl. So you're talking about Power Slap 6 as when that happened, and that match was like the biggest. Well, like there's other men's division. But I think out of all the matches, that was the most anticipated. Was the one with Sheena Bathory and Jackie, and Sheena Bathory. She's a beast. Everybody thought she was going to come in there and just dominate, And to me, when I talked to the guys about Power Slap 6, we were doing the review. I told them, to me, that was the biggest upset of the night is when Jackie came in there and laid Sheena out. And so you talk about the rules. So the rules, there's 3 rules. One is you have to give a full slap. Okay. When they say club, it's when you kind of tilt your arm and you hit them with the palm. So when you're swinging, it has to be a full slap. And if you club, then, hit them with the palm. And you can tell by the sound. If you listen, there's a thud when they get clubbed, and you can hear the clear slap if they get slapped. But they always slow it down too, and they kind of look to see. So you can't club, you can't flinch, which means that you can't move. You have to take the hit, and then you can't step into it. And that's what they were saying that Jackie did. They said Jackie stepped into it, but it was like you said, it was so small of a movement, but. Yeah, that to me, that was the biggest upset of the entire night was that particular fight. So
it was her debut, right?
Huh?
It was her debut too, right?
Yeah, it was her debut. Yeah. Nobody expected that to happen. No one. So that was, and it was on probably the biggest stage of Power Slap because they had Power Slap 6 the same weekend of the Super Bowl in Vegas. Okay. So a lot of, they finally opened it up to the public. So a lot of celebrities came out to it. Charles Barkley was there. Tom Brady was there. Chainsmokers, Travis Scott was there. I mean, they had like a whole ton of people there. And that's one of the things I talk to the guys about is I think that they were more, like the officials were more careful, I guess, with the fouls. Because they had such a large audience, but half of those matches ended up in DQs, disqualifications. So, which is what Jackie's ended up being, as a disqualification. So she still won it. So, and I think they were kind of think they went overboard, just kind of, with
Yeah.
some of those DQs. So
You can't be proud of that win because that was a pathetic win.
yeah, no, definitely there should be a rematch on that right there, because
Like maybe a no contest, but
yeah,
would not give that to the person that was knocked out cold.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm telling you, go back and look up Sheena Bathory and watch her last two fights. I mean, she's a beast. But and she's more like the Ronda Rousey of Power Slap. And so I think that's why I don't say they favored her, but kind of why the cards fell the way they did. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say flash in the pan, whiny and overrated. Okay, I get it. No, I'm just
so and Dana White, who does the UFC, is also does the Power Slap too. So they're trying to to grow that sport. But man, that's a tough sport.
I mean, no offense to the people that were on your show. I don't think it should exist, man. I really don't. I think that you're just asking for brain damage. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I know it's like the difference. You mentioned the difference between the slap and the club and everything, but
right.
Unprotected shots to the head.
Yeah.
Like that's just. I mean, I get combat sports. I've been a wrestler.
Right.
I did a couple of amateur MMA fights and whatnot, but unprotected shots to the head,
right.
to me that's just like nonsense, man. Like it doesn't. How long can you possibly do that?
Right.
You look at guys that have been doing boxing and MMA and they've taken one too many shots to the head, but that's protected, right? And now like you literally have no defense. You're there with your hands behind your back. Right. I don't know why there's not more uproar about, hey, stop this nonsense. Like when people used to senators used to try to stop the UFC from happening. You know? I don't know.
Well, I mean, since it's growing, they're actually starting to get sanctioned in other states now. So before they started, of course, they were unsanctioned. They got sanctioned in Vegas. They recently got sanctioned in Texas and in California, and they're trying to get sanctioned in Hawaii. So
in that case, I'm going to start a new sport. I'm going to start machete melee. If you can dodge the machete, right, you are the winner, right? And I'm going to get it sanctioned first in the alleys of Tijuana, and then next in California.
Well,
right.
They have like Power Slap is really big too in South Africa.
Yeah, I remember seeing the Russian videos, right? Yeah. Where you got like that big bearded guy that's just slapping everybody around, and then one day he finally gets knocked out. And look, for a viral video, I'm not gonna be like all high and mighty and be like, oh, I didn't enjoy that. Right. Hey, I enjoyed it just like everybody else. Right. But to try to legitimize it as a sport, to me, is just, it doesn't compute. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it's just like I don't get it. I mean, look, make a living however you want. Again, if that's something that you're doing and you're having success in it, cool. But just for me, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the guys make good money too. They make $10,000 for the match. If they win, they get another $10,000, and then if they have like the big slap of the night or whatever, that's another bonus. It's a sportsman bonus, so you can make $30,000 in one match.
And meanwhile, there's UFC champions who have to keep a second job, flipping burgers and fry and dipping fries in the oil in order to just survive. That's incredible.
So they're making good money, and the guys that I've had on are just so down to earth, and they all have second jobs too. That's not like their first job. You know what I mean? A lot of them have second jobs, but they're the nicest people. One of the guys who just won took the money that he got and did a liver transplant, and he gave part of his liver to his little baby. And he was able to take that money and pay for the surgery. So, I mean, there's a lot of good stories behind it, and then, like I said, the guys themselves are just so down to earth. Wolverine is the one. He's like I always say that he's the Hulk Hogan of Power Slap, because he's the OG. He's the guy with the red beard, the long red beard. You'll see him everywhere.
Yeah.
That's Wolverine, and quiet guy. You talk to him, it's always yes sir, no sir. Just the polite. Just one of the most politest guys that you ever met, man. But he's a beast when he gets in there, though.
Yeah, well, it's like my whole thing is just like the old saying, don't hate the player, hate the game, right?
Right.
I hate the game. Like I'm sure the people are great, but I'm like that game, no.
Well, if you ever need to make $10,000, then you know how to do it.
There we go, right? I'm gonna be clubbing everybody and disqualify me. I don't care.
Right, man. So, have you ever had a guest that you tried for a long time to get on the show and finally was able to get him on?
Ooh, have I ever? I don't think so, man. I don't. Here's the thing, and I don't mean to sound like, hey, I don't go chasing, but I don't. I just don't. Like I've had a few people where we've committed to it, and it's like, hey, let's do it, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I guess that's not happening. Obviously sometimes I get a couple people that refer people to me, and sometimes when they mention a big name, I try not to get too excited because I'm like, okay, I heard it and I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not gonna sit there and what do you call it? Count my eggs before they hatch or whatever,
right,
or count my chickens, whatever the saying is, right?
Yeah.
So no, I don't really, if it happens, it happens. I think again, some of the same people that I mentioned earlier, people that have been in movies or TV shows or wrestling or something like that, like those are always interesting. Those are always nice to have. But no, I don't wait too long, man. Like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Like I said, I'm open to talking to anybody, but I guess it makes me sound lazy in some respect, but I'm like, if it's too much work, I'm not doing it,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the longest I had was Brian Cuban, Mark Cuban's brother, came on the show.
Oh.
And he was an attorney. He's an author now. And his journey was completely opposite of Mark Cuban. So he struggled a lot with drugs and alcohol as an attorney. And so he was an addict for a long time. And he wrote a book. He wrote a book about it. And so I tried to get him on. And it took me about a year. And he finally came on the show. Because he's really conservative. I don't say conservative. He's not really conservative. He's a liberal, but he's very conservative in his personality. He doesn't like to get out there. But super cool guy. But if you get a chance to listen to his story on there, dude, it's incredible. And I bring stuff for people like that. I didn't want to talk about Mark because it's not about Mark's journey; it's about his journey.
Right.
And, so you get to hear his his story. So, who is the ideal guest? Like, who's your fantasy guest that you would love to have come on the show?
Man, that's interesting right there. I mean, I think anybody from like that was famous in the 90s, like I'm a big 90s kid. That's when I grew up and really, different musicians and actors and things like that. I don't think I even listen to anything current, I'm like, it was probably stops at the 90s, but obviously, if I'd be able to pick somebody's brain, like, somebody like any of the band members like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something that, that would be great.
Imagine having Flea on your show.
What's that?
Imagine having Flea on your show.
That would be crazy.
That'd be so interesting.
Yeah, that guy's on a different level, man.
Right.
Actually, I've met John Frusciante, but it was kind of funny because it's when I was a bouncer in LA, right, at a bar. I was working for a security company,
right, and
they just kind of like sent you out to different bars and stuff, and so they had me working at the Golden Gopher bar in downtown LA, right, and it's like it's like a little like pseudo dive bar, kind of fancy dive bar. They want to have the dive bar look, but like it's a little more upscale. So I'm standing there, and we'd had a problem recently with a lot of like homeless people, running into the bar and just you got to kick them out and whatnot. And so I see this guy just kind of like creeping up to the bar. I'm like, damn it, here comes another one. Right, I'm gonna have to kick this guy out, get my suit all dirty and everything. and then a limo comes up, right? And there's this lady that looks like she's going to prom, right? Dressed all nice and everything. And she walks right up to this bum, right? And then they start walking towards the door. I'm like, the hell? And I'm like, all right, let me just check this guy's ID, right? And I checked the ID and it says John Frusciante. I'm like, I told him too, I'm like, hey man, I'm a big fan of your work, but I wasn't gonna let you in. I thought you were homeless. And he just kind of gets like this nervous giggle, like, right, like just kind of like very nervous. I mean, but somebody like that would be interesting because they're obviously, musical genius. He's maybe not the most like, amazing guitar player out there, but in a way he is, because even simple things, he made sound like masterpieces. Like I think the first guitar solo I learned was like a crappy guitar solo from John Frusciante on one of the, probably like on Scar 2 or something like that, right? They're like single note guitar solos. He's not a great, guitar player by any means, but again, in a way he is, because that simplicity, it just works. And I think picking somebody's brain like that about music would be really interesting. Other than that, man, I don't know, some big names, maybe Tom Hanks, maybe Denzel Washington, like those are guys that were really big in the 90s, I think, but I don't know, anybody like that.
Right. I would love to have had a chance to sit down with someone like Bruce Willis, who's done all the stuff that he's done. It's a shame now he's kind of, in the stage of life he's in. But to be able to sit down and have somebody like that, come on the show and share all the stuff that they've done, I mean, that'd be incredible too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think anybody like him, or like if you watch like the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary or the Sylvester Stallone documentary, big muscle bound guys, but they're like so incredibly intelligent, right? So crafty, such grinders, man. And it's like, let's change what we think about them, because you see these people and it's like, whatever, they're just big old jocks. It's like, nah, man, they got a plan, and that's the reason they were successful, and I think it's always interesting. I pick everybody's brain, I don't care if, like I tell people at work when I'm training them, I don't care if you've been doing this for 20 years or it's your first day. I'm like, everybody brings something to the table,
Right. Cool. You're into the whole wrestling thing, right? With the
I mean, been a fan since I was a kid. Yeah.
Cool. One of the people I would love to sit down and talk to is Undertaker.
Huh.
Because the Undertaker, I watched his documentary, and just seems like such a an interesting person. He just moved to San Antonio, somewhere Austin, somewhere around there, here in Texas, to retire. But I would love to sit down and talk to him and hear his story.
Yeah. You know what? I would too, except I don't want him to tell any of his. I watched his Hall of Fame speech, man, and I'm like, all right, cool. He's going to tell some really interesting stories. And then he goes on with this garbage, like, these are my 3 mental moves. I'm like, you sound like a pyramid scheme guy. Like, all of a sudden, this great character, who has got great stories, he starts turning into like this, positive thinking kind of guy. I'm like, okay, maybe that worked for you or whatever, but like, dude, everybody wants to hear your stories, Right. Like, I think that he does the same thing in his one-man shows. He talks a little bit about wrestling, and then he goes on to his weird, like, positivity, like, right-wing kind of, talk. I mean, again, if you're going with the intention of listening to politics, great, but I don't think anybody really wants to, hear that when all you want to hear about is like, wrestling.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know he had that he was, I mean, I don't know. It depends on what the positive side, things that he's talking about. But yeah, my questions would probably more be like about the wrestling.
It's like he's trying to be more like a motivational speaker. I'm not. It's like if I go watch that, I'm like, I'm not here to listen to Tony Robbins.
Right.
I want to hear. I want to hear about Paul Bearer and Kamala and Diane Gonzalez.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things too. Like if you interview somebody who was famous for one reason and they retire. So like Emmitt Smith, one of the greatest quarterback. I don't running backs, and then you have like Undertaker, who's big in wrestling, and once they retire from that and they're trying to find themselves in a different industry, you know what I mean? I wonder how tough that is for them, because it's a whole new chapter of their life. So they're kind of trying to get past the what everybody knows them for, that part, and they're trying to move into a new chapter. I wonder how tough that is, for them in that transition.
It's like you've ever had to give up anything you'd like to do. When I was no longer able to, be a competitive wrestler in college and stuff like that, is like, well, that sucks. What do I do now?
Right.
Yeah.
And then everybody comes back to you and they want to hear, hey, just tell me all about your college days. You're trying to go on to the next thing. So I don't know, man. It seems like it takes them a while to kind of find where their niche is, because like Emmett, he went into real estate for a while, and then he did some other things, and now I think he's in NASCAR. So he's since he left the Cowboys, he's been trying to find his niche. I think it's difficult for somebody like that.
Yeah. And let's not even talk about the women that do pro wrestling, right? Then after they're done, then it becomes OnlyFans, and then when that dries up, it's like, let's go do a podcast.
Right? It's something else to do, man. And talking about Jackie, that's one of the things too that I like about Power Slap, is that the women there have almost as big of a platform as the men there. And in women's sports, is so difficult to get in to begin with, to get the advertising and get this, the same market and stuff that the men get, so her coming into like Power Slap, I think is huge. But and that's another thing too. I like to bring women athletes on the show and give them that exposure too, and talk to them, because they have a tough
women, right? Not like women.
No, exactly. Exactly. And that's the problem I have, with men trying to be women. I don't want this to get me canceled or anything, but because
go ahead. Sorry.
Because we fight so hard as it is, in these sports, and so I have a lot of respect for that. And so I think that for a guy to come in trying to compete in the women's and taking their chances away, I disagree with that. I mean, if somebody wants to be trans and they want to get into a sport, have your own sport. You know what I mean? Yeah. Have your own sport.
Well,
but let women have their sports, because these women are out there fighting just as hard, actually, maybe even harder than the men. To be able to compete and get that recognition.
Well, check it out. This is like before we started to normalize all that, right? I'm talking about maybe 5-6 years ago, maybe more. I remember there was a video on Facebook circulating, and I just posted it like, come on, you got to be kidding me, right? Because there was this, it was a community college basketball team, okay? Right. Community college. I'm talking about, local, people, like not like a big university, right? And a 6'8", 300 some pound man, or excuse me, I guess woman, whatever the pronoun there is, pretty much had to be allowed to be on the team against all these 5'5" young girls, and this guy was like 40 almost, right? It's like at this point you're just trying to be a sideshow, and you're trying to relive like your glory days that never happened, and you're trying to draw attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes it's not because like, hey, we have rights too. Of course you do, right? Of course you do, right? But like, look, I look at it too more from a standpoint of, you understand, like you were saying, right? Women's sports are so hard to get the same footing and everything like that. But you understand that even in schools, right, like Title IX and things like that, they've been taking away perfectly good men's sports too, right? To create girls' sports, right? And now what do we want to have all the guys that were going to play those sports now play the girls' sports too? Like, I don't get it, man. That's why a lot of wrestling programs shut down because of Title IX, right? And so they're like, hey, what's the least money making sport? Nobody watches wrestling. yeah, cut that. Let's give them another girls, soccer team or something like that. Right. And so nowadays we're at the point where it's like, okay, well, we got the men's soccer team. Hey, you didn't make the men's soccer team. You want to join the girls soccer team too?
Right. Yeah.
I don't know. I try not to wrap my mind around too much, but like back then when I posted that video, people are like, yeah, you're right. That's crazy. Right. And now it's like, if you're to post that, people are going to be like, you need to be more tolerant and they have rights. And, it's not about basketball. And like, just make it make sense. Just make it make sense to me.
You do you. You know what I mean? But have your own, sports coming up. You know what I mean? Leave the women, let the women, play their sports.
And this is coming from me. I'm as in the middle as I can be.
Yeah.
I don't swing either color. I'm not.
Right.
I don't care. I've never been, registered as either party. I'm coming straight from the middle. I'm just about what's, what makes the most common sense. Right. But I'm really finding, and it's really annoying these days that, there's no such thing as common sense anymore. That's a special quality that now only a few reserved people possess.
Yeah. It's sad, man, because, people should be able to express their opinions without everybody else wanting to cancel them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And like I said, I have nothing personal against them either, but I think that everybody's got their time and place, and just to have them, go into women's sports and with the women, struggling as hard as they are, it just makes it tough. It makes it tough for women to get ahead, So anyway, that's kind of where I am with it. But, with people like Sheena Bathory and Jackie, coming in to the sport, I think they're going to turn, kind of turn that corner in some of the sports, and hopefully other sports will start picking it up, and and people start getting more interested in it. But so if you ever get a chance to go look and see, those two. I would love to bring Jackie on too. I would love to have her on to talk to her because,
reach out before she becomes too big, man. I mean,
I know, man.
She's on Instagram.
I'll have to look her up. I have to see where she's at and try to get her on. Maybe Wolverine or one of the guys could hook me up. And so,
I mean, like, I don't personally know, like, we're not like, hey, I know you. Right. Like, I used to see her at tournaments,
Right.
But like, I think she's pretty accessible right now too. I mean, now that the buzz from that initial, viral video is dying down, I think that now would be the perfect time to reach out, man. That'd be great. But
talk to one of the guys. So, as a matter of fact, Wolverine was her coach. No, he was Bathory's coach. He was Bathory's her coach. In that he both Turbin and Wolverine coached all the contenders that night. So
I see. Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe we'll see.
And if not, man, I'm gonna recruit them for my Machete Madness tournament. Yeah. Right. Or what did I call it? Machete Mayhem. I gotta think up a name for it, man. It's gonna stick. It's gonna be that alliteration of MM though.
And when you do it, you gotta make sure you make the merchandise and so that
we'll get Danny Trejo on it, right? Because he'll do anything for $1. He needs it right now, He's in some IRS trouble right there, man.
Wow.
Funny thing is, Danny Trejo, he is actually across the street from my house doing a church event the other day. I'm like, man, I should offer him a real taco. He has Trejo's tacos, those artisan vegan tacos. I'm like, nah, man, you gotta go back to your roots. Get some real tacos in you.
He had vegan tacos?
Oh my God. Listen, I am not against, pandering to that crowd, especially in LA.
Right.
But if you're going to put your name on it, man, just do something good, because there's no way an artisan $6, $7 vegan taco is worth it. Stick to a straight up carne asada taco. If you want to dress it up a little bit, put some fancy sauce on it. I don't care. Right. Handmade tortilla, I don't know, but man, this guy's selling vegan tacos and trying to make them tough. It's like, get out of here with that, man.
Man, Yeah, I had somebody try to convert me to be vegan, and they're like, "Hey, here's some wings, some vegan wings, and it's cauliflower dipped in hot sauce." You know what I mean? Or buffalo wing sauce. And I'm like, it's not even the same. Well, this is my big thing about vegans. If you're opposed to a meat, why are you trying to recreate the meat?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just say what it is.
Yeah.
Just say what it is.
Just call it fried cauliflower, and we'll both be on our way.
Right. If buffalo wings are bad for me, they don't say this is cauliflower dipped in buffalo sauce and it tastes like a wing. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I'm sure that oily deep fried cauliflower is just as good as a regular piece of cauliflower, right?
Right. So and look, I like cauliflower too. Okay, so it's So
I've seen vegans my size, man. I'm like, what are you eating?
We have a fogo de chao out here, and they do that. They do a steak, and it's a mushroom. It's a mushroom made like a steak.
Portobello mushroom, yeah.
Yeah, but it costs the exact same amount as if you're buying a steak. I'm like, oh no, why? Why would a mushroom cost the same as a steak?
Yeah, portobello mushrooms are good, man. Like I wouldn't ever say like I'm giving up steak and switching to mushrooms, but if I had to, that would probably be my go-to because those are really good. They're very meaty in quality,
Right.
But to cost the same, nah.
Yeah, to cost the same as like a porterhouse steak is crazy. It's crazy. Now I'd be good for a good portobello something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
If you made it into a burger, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what confuses me about the vegans. Yeah,
that Brazilian steakhouse is no joke, man.
Yeah,
I think I took a couple of years off my life at the last Brazilian steakhouse I went to, nonstop, man. They're irresponsible, man. They're gonna hand me this little thing that says "keep going," right? The green means go. I'm never gonna put it on red, right? It's going to stay green the whole time. That's why every time they come to the table, they're just like, okay, right? More. Get some of that picanha. Yes, sir. Get some of that garlic steak. Absolutely. Little sausages, pile them on. The only things I probably won't do are like heart livers heart livers and kidneys. I won't do any of that.
Right. Hey, the Brazilian restaurants, those things are the bomb, dude. Those are.
Oh, yeah. The thing that I like is he catered to lazy, because like every other buffet, Golden Corral, right? It's like, okay, you got to get up and get your own plate. The Brazilians have figured it out, right? And they've really got a place in my clogged heart because they're like, we're gonna come to you, right? You don't even gotta do anything. We'll take our little swords and our tongs and we will put it on your plate for you. The only thing they're not gonna do is chew it for me,
Right.
But I think I can put in that effort.
It's funny is I had a friend of mine who was here, and he loved Brazilian restaurants. He would go there. He would take, an order and eat all this food. He'd take pictures of it, send it back to his friends in India. And, in India, you can't eat certain meats,
Right.
And so one day he calls me. He's like, hey, man, they're sending me back to India. So he got back to India. And dude, just from sending pictures from going to those Brazilian restaurants, he had so many death threats when he came back to India.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I was like, that cow is very sacred, I guess, man.
Yeah, they were threatening. They're like, watch your back. They throw you off a bridge. Or, it was like, you got some major death threats.
I'm going to choke you with all the arms of Vishnu. All right. And then they go on the internet and tell the girls, like, please remove cloth. Let me see Bob and Vagine. they'll try to propose to the girls online.
So yeah, that was funny because he called. Well, I guess it wasn't funny, but when he called me, he was seriously scared, man. He was scared for his life when he got back from eating there. But he loved that place when he was there.
Death threats are no joke, but that's kind of funny, man.
Right.
That's kind of funny. Yeah.
Well, tell my audience a little bit where they can find your show and when you normally do your shows.
Cool. So I'm gonna get back on it now. I've got a lot of people lined up. I usually record on the weekends, and I'll post the shows usually on Sundays. They usually come out Sunday afternoons, Pacific time, usually around like maybe 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, around that time. So
Okay.
Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, depending on where you are. And so you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at the Ignorance of Strength Podcast. This is a long one. At Ignorance of Strength Podcast. At Ignorance of Strength Podcast. And then on, I don't even use it. I don't know how to use it, but Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, Elon Musk's whole thing is at the Ignorance Pod. So at Ignorance of Strength Podcast on YouTube as well. Or at the Ignorance Pod on X, Twitter, Elon Musk. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. And then if you send me the links, I'll put those on the comment fields as well.
Sounds
and that
good,
would
man.
come check you out. Brother, man, thank
absolutely.
you so much, man. I'm glad we finally got to catch up.
Yeah, that was fun.
All right, cool. So we'll have to do this again, brother. Have to get you back on, and maybe we'll do a movie review together. We'll pick a 90s movie.
That might be good, man. I got some ideas. Yeah.
All right, tell me off camera what movie, and we'll watch it. Then we'll come back and do a movie review.
Sounds good, man.
All right, cool. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching Crossman Productions. Again, I want to thank Fabian for being on. Check out Ignorance is Strength. Go check out his channel and subscribe and like to it, and keep following him. And we'll bring him back on and we'll do a movie review. Until the next show, guys. Remember, you are uniquely designed with the purpose, and always keep moving forward. Peace.